Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Otsego City Council meeting. Tonight is Monday, May 9th. Audra, can you have the record show that our city attorney, city planner, city engineer, all council members are present, along with our assistant city administrator and our city administrator. At this time, I'll ask you all to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first item of business is our open forum. This is the portion of the meeting where you can come to the podium, state your name and address, and limit comments to 5 minutes or less. Would anyone like to speak at this time? All right. We will close the open forum and move on to consider our agenda for approval. Does anyone have anything that they would like to add or delete at this time? Adam?
Mayor, just a housekeeping note that there was a new document added to item 4.1.
Okay.
That should have been distributed in front of you, which will replace the version that was in your packet.
Thank you. Any other changes?
None for me.
Okay. And the motion would be in order?
Madam Mayor? Yes. I will approve the agenda as amended, item 4.1, the new addition that Adam gave us at the beginning of the meeting.
Second.
Motion by Brittany, seconded by Jeff. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item is our consent agenda. A motion would be in order.
Madam
Yes, Brittany.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
Motion by Brittany, seconded by Jeff. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item 4.1 is the Riverbend North Second Edition. Tom?
Madam Mayor, I'll be abstaining from this and be stepping away from the dais.
Okay. Audra, can you have the record show that? Thank you. And I will turn this over to the planner.
Actually, Mayor, the city attorney.
I'll turn this over to the city attorney. Dave?
Madam Mayor, this is was originally a two-phase development, and then as part of a refinancing initiative, the developer is asking to replat as part of the second phase. So I've drafted a development contract to address the replatting. Aside from that, very little has changed from the previous development contract. And actually, the public improvements that were required by the first phase are largely completed. So we'll be planning to release that first development contract. However, record this subsequent development contract against the property as part of the replatting in connection with the refinance. And we've also had discussions regarding revisions of the TIF contract. City administrators had TIF council review that. I reviewed that. We feel that revisions to the TIF contract are appropriate as well. So we're recommending that the council approve both the new development contract in connection with the platting and the TIF contract.
Okay. One question, Adam, and did our bond counsel, Mary Ipple, look at this also? I took,
Yeah, Mary Apple's firm Taflaw drafted those. Yep.
thank you. All right. Any questions for the city attorney or Adam on this? Adam, the question is on your, you don't have a cover sheet on the new 4.1. He's able to use that.
The motion would stay the same.
Stay the same.
Mayor,
Yes, Jeff.
I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-43, approving a development contract to authorize city staff to execute release of development agreement and adopt resolution 2022-44 authorizing execution of an amended and restated TIF development agreement and 2 assignments of a tax increment notes.
Is there a second? I will second the motion. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Can someone go get, item 4.2 is Prairie View Estates. I will turn this one over to you, Dan. See, it was under planning, and then I did see it was the attorney, but it's still under
When we
planning.
did the RCA, we thought Dave never gets to talk.
Oh, there you go.
That was my
Hey,
big
Dave.
chance.
Dave got to talk.
Kind of like Sabrina.
What did I miss?
I
Dave-
spoke.
Dave spoke.
Motion to adjourn. Are you ready to vote?
May not happen again for many years.
Yeah.
All right.
Such as,
Item
Leah.
4.2, 4.2, we have people in the audience. 4.2 Prairie View Estates, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the third time through for this proposed development located to the east of McIver Avenue and south of 80th Street. A new developer this time has acquired the project. So they're applying for a zoning map amendment and preliminary plat approval. Changes from the 2018 project where 25 lots were proposed. In 2021, it was basically half the project and 9 single-family lots. They're now proposing 28 single-family lots out of the 2 5-acre parcels that are currently developed, each with a single-family dwelling. The comprehensive plan guides the property for low-density residential uses. It's zoned R4 single-family district based on the original project approval. They're proposing to change the east portion of the project to better line up with the approved Prairie Point development, as well as you have the surrounding Arbor Creek development to the south and west, Prairie View Elementaries to the north. You can see the highlighted lots on the east side of the development that are proposed to change from R4 district to R5 district. It basically allows a slightly smaller, narrower lot that lines up exactly with the lots proposed to the east along within the Prairie Point development. It also, because of the multiple corner lots on the west side of Marlowe Avenue extending east, west, or north, south through the development, provides better arrangement of lots within the development. But overall, the change, it's 3 additional lots. The lot area average is still just under the 12,000 square feet. That's typical for neighborhoods in Otsego. So it's a compatible change with the activity going on in the area. Consistent with the first preliminary plat proposed for this project, it would extend Marlowe Avenue directly north to intersect 80th Street and 79th Street to intersect that roadway with the city's plan for sidewalks on one side of all streets, and then also providing sidewalks on both sides of minor collector streets. There'd be a sidewalk along the north or the south side of 80th Street, excuse me, that would then connect to a crosswalk just to the east of the bus access at Prairie View Elementary. City staff has had extensive discussions with ISD 728 staff about access to the school, both with this development as well as Prairie Point to the east, and how they need to be able to get kids in and out. This was their preferred location for the crosswalk, staff's preferred location for extension of Marlowe Avenue and the connection to 80th Street, and it benefits the development in that way. So now that we're completing these street connections through this basically infill development to complete the area as it was originally laid out back in 2002 when Martin Farms was originally developed. Landscaping would consist of 2 trees on each lot installed at the time of construction. There's no parkland being acquired from the subject site based on the area being within the service boundary of Prairie View Elementary to the north. And the city engineers reviewed construction plans regarding streets, stormwater, utilities, and all the easements, and that's included as part of your packet. City staff recommended approval of the application based on consistency with the comprehensive plan and compliance with the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance. That was subject to 13 conditions. The Planning Commission conducted their public hearing on May 2nd to consider the request. There were 3 property owners at the public hearing that spoke with concerns about the development. The minutes from that meeting are included as part of your packet this evening for reference. But after closing the public hearing, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval. City staff drafted findings of fact consistent with that recommendation also as part of your packet. Can address any questions the council has.
Okay, thank you. Does the developer wish to comment? Okay. All right, then, as Dan said, we will address any comments or questions.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yes,
here.
Tina.
It says 28 single family and villa. How many single family and how many villas? are there gonna be?
So they're all single family lots. None of them are villa lots.
Oh. Okay. Why does it say single family and then villas homes? Does it propose 28 lots, single family and villa homes?
They're all just standalone, single family homes that are going to comply with the requirements of the zoning ordinance for single family dwellings. Typically, a villa home functions more like a townhouse.
Right.
We've given exception to garage sizes and such for those types of, none of these are proposed as.
Okay, so they'll just be single family.
Correct. Yep.
Any other questions? And as Dan said, there were residents that were present that evening. Dan you did gather all their information. There was some issues with trees to people that were to the south of this development, and then also concerns with the busing traffic.
Correct. Mayor, the three property owners were along the south flat line. And obviously, the concern is where that tree line was between when Harbor Creek developed and where this property
Mhm.
will affect. So as we did with Prairie Point, we have their contact information. We've already reached out and said that before any site work happens here, we will have an on-site meeting with them to discuss project boundaries and the extent of work that's to occur.
Tom?
Madam Mayor, the access to this property is going to be via 79th Street and 80th Street.
So there's the existing Marlowe Avenue that dead
Yeah,
ends at
Marlowe.
the south flat line.
Yep.
79th Street at the east or west flat line, and then a new connection at 80th Street.
So where kind of Marlowe comes in and given the access point to the school, do you think that could create an issue in the future?
Mayor, it does meet our intersection spacing guidelines established under the zoning ordinance. And one of the things we've discussed with the school district is how they will be routing bus traffic to and from the site. We worked with the developer of Prairie Point to maintain the street that basically connects back to 83rd Street as a minor collector street. So that's where the bus traffic will come through. We've also discussed with ISD 728 staff that they would not allow a right turn into their student or visitor parking lot off of 80th Street, so that you can't approach the school from the east side of it. You have to take MacIver or 85th Street and enter that queuing lane. That would be forming, especially with COVID. One of the comments discussed at the public hearing was that queuing lane on 80th or on MacIver.
MacIver, yeah.
So city staff did look. We can't just restripe the intersection, but it would be possible at a cost to move and put in a dedicated right turn lane. City staff was going to include that as part of the capital improvement plan discussions for this year.
And I did have that under my items as a bring back to council this evening. Because they had some concerns and they were concerned that people would be cutting through this neighborhood to get in front of everyone off of MacIver since it stacks so far to the south.
And Mayor, I think it's also worth noting that with Prairie Point, the existing street that is Marlowe going to the north is coming out. So that's going to go further to the east before there's an intersection.
And also the timing of a school with the middle school opening too. Now you'll have two separate times versus the K through 8 of everyone being in that one building to the south.
Correct.
So that is something that it'll be interesting to
with
see
the
how that
traffic.
alleviates the traffic with the middle school versus the elementary potentially for the next year. But if you've driven over there, it does back up.
It gets back up all the way down to by me.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's
Yeah,
bad.
I do have a question
Yes.
too in regards to this. So that was the point I was gonna bring up with that four-way stop there, are we going to think about changing that? I don't know, for light, because we do back up. I mean, this morning it was backed up all the way past my intersection to get into my neighborhood, which is 70 in MacGyver and 73rd. I don't know if that is feasible for a light or what, but I mean, we have an issue right now, so I can only imagine with another school, more residents down that way, that it's just gonna be jammed even more so. So that's one question. My other question is with this turn, and maybe I missed the whole thing, but on 80th here, that turn, that's a horrible turn. Is that gonna be fixed or widened or
Are you referring to the S curves? Or which?
The
These
Marlowe
turns
80th.
here,
Marlowe and 80th?
Yeah.
It's right now, it's horrible.
so that comes out completely.
It
uh,
does.
And
Okay.
you drive through the neighborhood, basically this pattern.
Oh, where, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking down. I was looking at my
Oh.
computer.
Right up there.
So
Okay,
this pattern here takes
Okay.
out this existing street between.
Got
this
it,
and
okay.
80th.
okay. All right. Perfect.
Mayor,
Mhm.
that section of street is also wider than a typical residential street, just for bus traffic that has to come and go from the school. Again, we're asking the school district not to allow right in so that residents don't come in that way, that they all go around 85th, come down MacIver and come in from the west, and then have to take the left-hand turn, and get in line with everyone else. As far as putting together a signal for that intersection for the 20 or 30 minutes, it would be very expensive. We have looked at the right-hand turn lane and making a very long right-hand turn lane, 300 feet, about as long as we could put in that section. That'll queue, 10 to 15 cars. Of course, they're turning right. That will give room for more straight vehicles to get through, to get to the other school. And as the mayor suggested, is there are two schools, so we'll be splitting the amount of traffic potentially between the two.
And different times.
And at different
Hour later.
times, correct. So I don't know if we could, look at that right away and maybe look at putting the right-hand turn lane in.
So on
With
MacGyver
the
and
school,
80th.
yeah, MacIver going north to turn into 80th. We've done some preliminary numbers, roughly $125,000. It's a small project, so it might be more than that. But that should help, plus the splitting of the schools. I think it might be a reaction to put in something that might cost us close to, 350,000 or more for a signal. And I'm not sure it meets warrants.
Additional maintenance, but then maybe that's something that we can look at more when we're doing the capital improvement talks. But we probably won't know to see with the different schedules until next year,
Yeah.
next school year, which
Mayor,
will be
be this
year.
fall.
And
One,
it'd also be our first signal. I mean, this would be our signal. All the rest of them are owned by a county
Got it.
or they're owned by MnDOT. And, nobody here has expertise on staff on managing those.
Okay.
So that would be another issue.
Sure.
Sure.
Any
Jeff?
other options for that? I mean, if you're to come across that where, like I said, right now it does back up and we just have that one school there. And I'm just
Yeah,
thinking more people and then additional school, granted, the times may be different, but I'm just thinking
Yep.
proactively.
well, we haven't looked at it yet, but,
Okay.
a roundabout, but the problem is if everybody's taking a right
Yeah.
and it queues up through the roundabout, it just kills the roundabout. So
Sure.
Right.
that's a problem with the roundabout is if you've
Okay.
got so much traffic at a certain given amount of time that people won't take turns and leave the roundabout open for traffic coming through. So that would be my concern there. I mean, it works well in lots of other
Right,
conditions,
right.
but in this situation where it backs up through it, that would be a problem.
and we have that same issue on the east side of the city with Otsego Elementary. Yes,
Yeah.
it's a county road and they're, using that shoulder because there isn't a way to get them in and out safely either. So and, I've spoken with the principals about it. And they have said that obviously it's still people aren't putting their kids on the bus. Those bus routes are out there that those kids can ride the buses, but parents are still choosing to drive their kids versus putting them on buses. So parent drop off pickup is larger than they've seen in previous years. And that's been for the last few years for them. Jeff?
One thing I could attest to, could we, when you discuss more with ISD 728, they don't allow cars to drop off kids till 7:50, then they don't open the doors till 8. Could we possibly adjust that, at least for Prairie View Elementary? So that could be part of it, because it's usually a game, and when can I, when I bring my kids in the morning, if I make it there before 8, traffic is fine. As soon as I'm coming around, drop them off, go around, and then I see the line that you saw today, and that usually was at COVID. COVID, of course, was worse, but it seems to be they don't allow you to drop or open the doors until 7:50. Then they don't open the doors till 8. So that could be part of that traffic
And
deal. So
I have a comment to that. So next year will be, the elementary will start again at that 9:15 timeframe. So it'll back up and match all the other elementaries. But they don't, same with Otsego, we've asked them to open the doors, and it's because they don't have paid staff on at that time. So it's their prep time, not the time when they should be out opening up the doors. Somebody has to be at the kids, is what we've been told. So it's unfortunate, because obviously it seems easy, just say, open up the doors and let kids in, and but maybe then people would show up an hour early, I guess, who knows what might happen in those scenarios. But I'd agree, that it seems like there should be an easier solution here.
yeah, they'll figure itself out, right?
One question, Dan, as you mentioned, the right in, right out, that they weren't going to be allowing right in off of 80th Street. So question I had after being at the planning commission that night, what if I'm a resident that's over there? How, I have to go all the way up to Mason to go to 85th to go to,
Correct.
even though I live right there,
Or your kid
or
can walk,
kids could walk, okay.
because there will be trail and sidewalk to get to the school.
Okay.
Mayor, it's similar to people kind of sneaking in the back way on Otsego Elementary and dropping off at school in Old Park, walking the trail.
So you may get extra traffic in that neighborhood, but it'll be people dropping their kids off.
That's what we're
Similar
trying
to
to
what we're-
avoid, is having people go through the neighborhood to drive up to the school and short circuit the line.
Sure,
There would be the opportunity, they could go in the middle school parking lot, come to basically this point in the parking lot, have the kids walk across internal to the site too, which could help alleviate traffic.
Mhm.
Because there is a trail connection between the two schools.
sure. Once a parent figures that out, that's what they'll do. Okay. All right. Any other questions regarding this application? Yes, Brittany.
When would this project start? I see there's some things you have to take care of over here.
Madam Mayor, Scott Dahlke, Civil Engineering Site Design Project Engineer. We're looking to go forward here as soon as we can here this year. Looking to come forward with final plat and street construction plans here as soon as we can. Looking to get the site clearing and whatnot underway here this fall, and utilities start this fall too. So I know it seems like we're just starting, but in the construction world, we're already halfway done with the year. So we're going to try and get it done as fast as we can.
All right. Any other questions? Tom?
And Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 2022-06, amending the zoning map and approve the preliminary plat of Prairie View Estates, subject to the conditions as stated by the findings of fact and decision.
Second.
Motion by Tom, seconded by Brittany. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item is item 4.3, the West Wastewater Treatment Facility. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. As the council is aware, plans and specifications have been put together and out for bid to expand the West wastewater treatment facility and make other improvements. City staff did hold a neighborhood meeting regarding the project in March that was attended by 2 residents, one adjacent to the facility and another an interested landowner to the southwest of the facility. And then you're also considering at tonight's meeting awarding of the bids. So the expansion from a zoning perspective requires a conditional use permit amendment based on the prior approval from the facility back in 2004. The comprehensive plan guides the site for public uses. It's zoned INS institutional district. I'm familiar with the capacity expansion, also the location with surrounding neighborhoods based on the agreement that the city council at the time made with the developer to acquire the site. The professionals are here and can review in greater detail the site improvements that are occurring, but are summarized on the perspective of the facility. The two main improvements would be the operational improvements at the northeast corner of the site, and then also the addition of the administration building that includes the garage as well as the ability to transfer biosolids completely enclosed in contrast to the current process. Here's kind of a more planned view of the proposed improvements and obviously the reasons for doing it. Cleaner discharge, noise attenuation, addressing the complaints that were received from the neighborhood in the past, addressing the process for removal of the biosolids, and then eventually addressing changing the access out of the neighborhood more directly to County Road 19 via 73rd Street. The building heights all comply with the limits established by the zoning ordinance, the tallest building being 31 feet in height. The zoning ordinance establishes a minimum setback from the property line of 75 feet for any of the operational facilities. And you can see on the screen that all the proposed additions comply with that. There'll also be additional landscaping added adjacent to the administration building, but particularly to the operational side to provide additional screening and buffering of those facilities from surrounding residential dwelling. Planning Commission held a public hearing at their meeting on May 2nd. They recommended approval by a vote of 5-0. There was one resident adjacent to the facility who basically had question regarding the location of the access and the improvements in that direction, but no other comments.
Thank you, Dan. Any questions for staff? Or emotion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Jeff.
I can make a motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve a conditional use permit amendment for the Otsego West wastewater treatment facility, subject to the conditions as stated within the findings of fact and decision as presented.
Is there a second?
Okay.
Motion by Jeff, seconded by Brittany. Is there any discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Tom.
what's the timeline, updated timeline on this? Dramatic pause.
It's just easier that way. How much detail do you want?
Yeah, just an overview of the overall.
Okay.
Kind of.
Still starting construction this year, operational completion spring of 2024. Realistically, probably about this time, 2024. Substantial and final completion later in 2024. But the important part of getting the process running about 2 years from
now. Any follow-up? All right. Any other questions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
How many years have we been discussing this?
A long time. All right, moving on to item 5.1, Walsh Estates and Ode Acres Street Renewal Project. Ron.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the annual street renewal project 2022, which is the Wallace Estates area. We had it in our capital improvement plan for around 895,000. We then did the feasibility study, and then with the new prices for the year, we had that estimated at 991,000. And then we presented it with the plans and specs at 951,000, $60,000 alternate for doing some drainage improvements. We did get the low bid from Minnesota Paving Materials. They are the same thing. They were hard drives, if you remember old hard drives. So they've done quite a bit of projects in the area, and they're out of Rogers. So we have no issues with them being the prime contractor. And their bid amount was $766,326 for the base bid, which is of course quite a bit below what even our CIP was. So we were pretty happy with the prices that came in. We had 5 of them total, and they go all the way up to $936,000. So we're recommending, well, there's the alternate here that we were talking about, and it was 60,000 on our estimate, but in the actual, if you flip back to the previous, it was 76,000. So it didn't come in as nicely as we had expected for that portion of it. Staff has discussed it since it didn't meet that same drop in value that we saw in the rest of it, or wasn't reciprocal. We didn't believe that this improvement is necessary at this time, and it actually might open more than we want to. If everything doesn't work out as planned, I mean, if we just do the street, then we're just repairing the street, and plus we're using street fund money to repair the street instead of also using funds to do drainage, which probably should come out of a different funding mechanism.
Sure.
So staff is recommending that only the base bid be awarded, and we recommend going with Minnesota Paving and Materials for that $766,326.07.
Is there any questions or comments? Tom?
And Madam Mayor, that alternate bid, if you were saying, Ron, was for the drainage
Yeah.
issues.
Go forward one slide. So it's mainly in that very southwest corner of the area. There is some standing water there. It doesn't affect the road. We have very deep ditches there. And I drove through it a few weeks ago. You know, it's after the snow had melted. They mow right up against it, and they must be able to mow across it because there's not cattails there. So I think from time to time it does dry up enough that they can maintain it. It's a nuisance, but a lot of these issues are caused by private driveways that are either too high or set at the wrong, set in the opposite slope direction they should be. And for the city to come in and take that on, it might not be the correct avenue.
And if we were to go ahead with 76,000, that would come out of a different fund that taxpayers pay for that small area.
Correct.
Ron, one question that I had, I'm sorry, you're done.
Yep.
Okay, that obviously, as we had talked about the project originally going forward, and you had talked about the alternate bid on this, my notes on here were I had some concerns with when we build the road, and the road is the same height, so we're not changing anything. We're not adding, I just want to make sure we're not adding any additional water to this area, that they weren't anticipating it's gonna be at the same level it was before.
Correct.
And I would agree, I would not want to take road money out of that, since this is really a drainage issue. But I just wanted to make sure we weren't adding any undue additional water to that area.
And the last slide is the schedule. We
Okay.
open these on May 3rd, potentially awarding tonight as soon as possible at construction start. And we've given them a window of 9 weeks to get the work done. So if they start later, they still have to meet that deadline. We have September 15th, but it's, we don't want them to start it and then walk away from the project for a few weeks and come back. We want to give them a finite amount of time that meets the project, with some rain days and such.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we need a motion.
Make a motion.
All right, Tina?
I might have here.
Sorry.
Motion to adopt resolution 2022-45, accepting bids and awarding contract for the 2022 street renewal project. City project number 22-03 to OMG Midwest Inc., Minnesota Paving and Materials of Rogers, Minnesota, in the amount of $766,326.07.
Second.
Okay, motion by Tina, seconded by Tom. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to item 5.2, which is the West wastewater treatment facility bids. Mr. Scott Schaefer.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
and do have some slides that I think Adam is
Yeah.
working on.
Sorry. It's taking me a second.
Well, as we're going through that, I will say I've got good news and some not so good news. The slides will start with the good part. All right. So bid tab on the screen there, go to, in general, just run through that. These were good bids. I was very happy with them. The facility projects in particular have been challenging bidding environment the last few months. And to have our apparent low bidder coming in under the estimate, I was very happy about. The alternates in this case, we had the alternates on there. They were very much alternates. It was kind of if we get good pricing, we would potentially recommend the alternates. But at the very least, it's stuff that will need to get done further into the future, and this will give us a good basis for carrying that on future CIPs when those pieces of equipment do need replacement. So if we go to the next slide that has a little bit more detail, Rice Lake Construction Group was again our apparent low bidder, coming in at just under the estimate. Gritter Construction, so Rice Lake and Gritter have both done facility work for the city and both produced competitive bids. Morcon Construction was somewhat of a newcomer to this type of construction, and it was not a surprise that they had a bigger gap. They just weren't able to bid as competitively when they're more of a newcomer to this type of construction. So two very good bids, one that was not much of a surprise where it ended up, and a pretty easy recommendation in this case to recommend Rice Lake Construction Group with the apparent low bid, and with that recommendation, recommending no alternates be awarded. So if we go, these ended up as two separate agenda items. I really have an integrated slide deck. So just some other pieces of it. This general contractor and in fact the electrical subcontractor and mechanical subcontractor are going to be the same team that we had on the East Biosolids facility. So there'll be some nice familiarity there. Again, it was a challenging bidding climate. There were a few things that as an engineering team and the city administration team that we had done that I want the council to be aware of at this time. With that bidding environment, one of the things that was happening is that the general contractors were getting very short-term quotes. It wasn't everything. It was some materials, for instance, pipe, which is quite a bit on these projects. Instead of the typical terms that contractors were used to, where whatever quote they got on bid day was what they were going to pay. They have been getting quotes that just say the pipe at the time of shipping, not even the time of putting in the purchase order, but the time of shipping is what they will be paying. So we had to make the choice of whether we could have just allowed that to move forward and the contractors would have all priced their risk into the project. We made a different decision to try to, instead of just putting the price of that risk being bid into the project, we had made an informal communication with the general contractors that we asked them to identify their costs that were on not what we call non-traditional terms. And so we've been able to quantify that based on the information that they've provided to us. They're break it into two categories of those materials. There's about $4 million of the project that is on short-term terms and conditions, 15 days or less. And so that about $4 million is probably less solid in terms of those prices. And then in terms of materials, there's about another, the part that was in what I'd call more traditional terms and conditions was about $14.4 million that was in that 30 to 60 day range. The balance being labor and some of the other things that aren't really affected by the terms and conditions of their procurement. So the majority of the materials on the project were still under more like normal terms and conditions. So there's about $4 million that is that 15 days or less. So there is a portion of this that, in the unlikely event that prices go down, we would be able to know that if that happens before they're able to lock it in. Especially with pipe, we've got a decent idea of where the market is going up and down with pipe. But in the event that there is some substantial material increases, I may be back in front of you having that discussion at some point. But we felt that it was a benefit to the project not to lock in risk-based pricing and get the benefit of better pricing and see where the market goes with those items. So we've got the documentation. If we do need to have that discussion again in the future, we'll have a basis for having that discussion. So it is definitely not a blank check. So no action on that today, but I wanted you to be aware of that. The next slide. I guess should we pause and do this part
I think why
or just
why
go
don't you
through the
run
end of
through
it
all the
and
information?
do them together?
Council will have to make two separate motions, but that's fine.
Okay. Related to that, the professional services amendments, two amendments.
Madam Mayor, just interrupt, are we going essentially into 5.3 now?
Correct.
Yeah,
These
so
slides,
it is.
these slides relate to that.
Okay, yes. Really going into 5.3 and then we'll come back to them. Professional services amendments, we're looking at about 27 months of active construction, more like 24 getting to the operational completion, but then some other pieces that we have to do. That's about $2.2 million for the normal construction administration and resident project representative. In addition, the programming services, this is something that AE2S does provide. More traditionally, it goes on under the contractor scope, but it's something that we also provide. So I broke that out separate. Estimated $322,000. So those are what I would call traditional services. There is another item in there that is part of the schedule, and I'll discuss it more in the schedule, but MPCA, Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, through their EAW process, which is quite a bit different than the EAW process when it's a city-led process, is requiring additional air modeling to get to the completion of their EAW process. When we went into this original EAW, we did not anticipate, based on the nature of the project, to do any air modeling. We've already done what I'd call more simplified air modeling. We've already gone through the process, done a conservative air model, submitted that. We've shown that the project meets the state standards. We follow the MPCA's guidance when we did that. The MPCA essentially, in my opinion, rejected their own guidance and rejected that modeling that we had done and dictated that we have to go back and do refined air modeling. To say that I was frustrated would be an understatement. I think there's some professional disagreement on what should be included in this, but MPCA as the RGU, the basically they're the ones sponsoring this EAW. They have the power to dictate what needs to be done for this EAW. So we are hoping to get through this with less than that required amount, but the estimate that we have on it right now is that $68,200. That is part of what is also moving the schedule back, and I'll speak on that a little bit more detailed. Think on the next slide. Okay, so bid opening was April 28th. That was a slight move. That was slightly amended from the originally advertised bid opening of 26. Basically, we moved it from a Tuesday to a Thursday to get further away from another large similar project that was also bidding the prior Thursday. So we got a week in between them. And I think that also definitely helped with the general contractors. We're here today, May 9th, presenting it to council for project award. We do intend to have it signed with the general contractor by the end of the week. If you remember the Buy American, Build America provisions, that we're staying ahead of those additional provisions that are still not defined by EPA. They're getting a lot closer, but we're staying ahead of those provisions. Originally in the bidding documents, we had an assumed July 15th date to be in the field. That was our best available information when we put the documents out to bid. It was just slightly before bid opening that we had heard this news from MPCA about the air modeling. We still don't have a distinct estimate other than likely early October when we'll actually get into the field, because there's quite a few steps between here and there of actually getting through that refined air modeling. We have spoken with the general contractor about it. They, based on the schedule, that delay on the front end will not be as long of a delay on the back end. And it depends on the actual completion date. Basically what happened is that the completion date that was previously estimated, the long lead item was the electrical gear showing up, just getting it ordered, getting it fabricated, getting it to the site. So that was the critical path for getting that construction completed. It has now switched slightly to actually getting the buildings, because we won't be able to start excavating by state law. We can't start that until this EAW process is complete. So that puts the buildings a little bit further behind. They estimated that what had originally been an operational completion date of April 15th, 2024 will be delayed 4 to 6 weeks. So generally some delay, but not as bad as I had initially braced for when we learned about the air modeling requirement. And they're anticipating that substantial and final completion will not be impacted by the delayed start of construction. So in general, it's not the best news, but we're doing a decent job, or the contractor thinks they'll be able to do a good job of trying to maintain the schedule the best they can. With that, there could be some potential change orders with some winter construction, but we're talking probably on the order of 100 to 200,000 within the scope of the project. It's still they're not the type of change orders that we want to have happen, but they're pretty manageable within the scope of the project. So overall, the schedule news is not great, but it definitely could be worse. So that's where I think that's all the information I plan to present before we open it up for questions.
So I have a question in my notes as I was reading this. Is it normal for them? Are we the only city that's all of a sudden at this 10th hour, we have to change? Has this ever happened in any of the other cities and any other projects that you've done?
There's a similar case with Owatonna, and Owatonna was the most recent where this happened. What happened in Owatonna, the difference being that the nature of this project doesn't have what I would consider significant air pollution potential. In Owatonna, they were taking anaerobic digesters, which produce basically it's a biogas. It's a mix of methane and carbon dioxide. And then they were planning to burn that essentially renewable natural gas in a combined heat and power generator. Like that is an activity that actually has the potential to need an air permit. Our project we're adding an emergency generator and we have natural gas building heaters. Like in my opinion, there's nothing about the nature of this project that warrants this sort of requirement for refined air modeling. And I don't know if I would really call Owatonna a precedent. I think what Owatonna did was showed MPCA that there is some amount of air pollution that comes from this type of project. I guess as a few other examples, I went back and looked at the original EAW for the original construction of the West Wastewater Treatment Facility. The entirety of the air pollution section, the answer was N/8. That was the whole thing. Now that was 20 years ago. So things change in 20 years, but that project also had an emergency generator. We've done projects with emergency generators that had no air pollution scrutiny. We've filed with MPCA the air permit applicability determination, which is a mouthful, basically showing that this project does not need an air permit. So we're in this weird spot where we don't need an air permit, but we still need to, in the MPCO's opinion, do this refined air modeling. And it all comes down to the cumulative impacts. They're basically going to look at the existing air quality, add on the estimated potential to emit from the activities of the project, and then compare that to the air modeling and dispersion at the fence line. Essentially, they're using the same process that you would do for what I would call real air pollution activities, because that's what they have available, is either you have zero air pollution potential or you have to go to this full refined air modeling and their full-blown process, the same process that would be getting used if you were trying to permit a coal-fired power plant or something on that order. So we're one click more than zero, and so we're getting thrown into the full refined version.
Unfortunate. Like, I mean, I think this will obviously impact all future expansions for every community then.
I don't know that I've had enough conversations to know I'm probably not going to be able to fix it for this project, but I've started those conversations with MPCA that they need to get this fixed for future projects because this cannot happen. I mean, based on their current interpretation, we couldn't even build the most simple stabilization pond for a small town right now without going through this refined air model. So there is something broken with their process, and something needs to be fixed.
Yes, Tom.
As far as the process goes, is there an ability that it can change along the way, or once we go ahead, we just have to go ahead with it?
I wish I could tell you that there would be ability to change along the way, but like what we had already submitted based on MPCA's guidance is the reduced version, and they rejected their guidance around that. So I'm not sure what path would be less than that would be a potential alternate path, other than they just change their mind on their previous decision, which, based on the conversations I've had, I don't really see happening, because it's their technical staff that are making these decisions.
And backing up our project and adding costs.
Correct.
Is there a way to talk to people about technical staff?
Yes, I mean, I think there is. my concern has always been, yeah, does that have the potential to make the approval process that we're already on moving towards even that much harder? I don't know that it does, but I've already started the conversations about if we did want to set up some sort of meeting, what that might look like. So I think I would look to the city to know who would be the appropriate participants in that. I guess just to do a little comparison again to Owatonna. Owatonna ended up going to the state legislature to have some of this discussion about the air permitting requirements, or the air, it's not even really air permitting, it's the air assessment requirements that are getting put into the analysis of these projects.
And the result of them doing that was
Successful.
I think they were going there more to plead their case for money at that point with the legislature than to try to actually change the process. But it is not an unknown issue, I guess is the point of that. I don't fully understand what role the legislature could potentially have in changing MPCA's environmental assessment worksheet policies. Because you're talking like, there's like legislation.
I would assume that they would be changing the policies, but it's essentially putting pressure on them to do away with something that doesn't need to be there in the first place.
Yeah.
And comes in late in the game too,
Yeah.
like not. In the, right.
Yes.
At the end, I mean, they control the purse strings for the NPCA as well. So.
True. My biggest frustration is inconsistency, because the MPCA isn't the only organization that does EAWs. I mean, Dan and Ron are also involved in that process and don't, when an EAW is brought for the city, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I'm confident that if this process could be led by the city, we would not be doing this.
I would think it might be appropriate that the city draft something to our representatives and let them know this kind of burden that the MPCA is putting on us.
They're aware of our projects, so I'm just. It'd be different if we had started this project, we knew this was going to happen because everyone has to do it or something, but then to
Correct.
get this late in the game, and then now we need to halt, and it affects our construction.
It does.
I think we need to reach out to them. Have Dan or Ron or Dave, have you guys in other cities that you guys work in seen this kind of happen? Well,
Madam Mayor?
yes.
Just to go back to, is there anything else in your presentation, or are we?
Question.
we are at the
Questions. Yeah.
All right, going back to the 5.2, we, Adam, we have this budgeted for 33,889,800, or
Not
We had it.
exactly. The budget is based more around the annual debt service of the project.
okay.
Than it is the construction cost, or our CIP number is less than what the contract came in.
So
we
essentially, once we go ahead with this process, we'll get some better understanding of what our debt service.
Correct. The
is gonna be.
financing is tied to the same process until there is a permit from MPCA. The state revolving fund dollars cannot be awarded to our project by the Public Facilities Authority. So,
And then as far as when it gets into the amendments, the $2.196,322,000 and the 68,200. That's in addition to the 33,889,000, correct?
That is correct, in addition to all costs incurred to date as well.
Okay.
Will be included in the financing.
And I see that in the contract, the 2,196,000, how is that number come to?
That would be a question for Scott.
It's hours estimates over the course of the project. We did a month by month breakdown of basically, we did an initial estimate before we had apparent low bid contractor, had additional discussion with the contractor on how they anticipated they would proceed with construction, and then did a month by month breakdown of hours along with that.
Or, and just to throw out an assumption, assume that this project drags on past that spring 2024. Does the contract price change, or are we locked in at that 2,196?
It actually goes past, the operational completion is the two parts to the answer. The operational completion is the one that we've been very focused on, because that's the point at which
Which is
our,
2025.
the operational completion is when we will be able to accept houses beyond what our current rated recs are. So that's the one I've been most focused on. The construction assumptions go to the end of 2024 based on because there's some other pieces of the project that even after we have it operating, they can still be finishing up the other things. So there is some assumptions in the contract. I'm not actually remembering the exact numbers, but it states the number of months of active construction plus some additional weeks of partial activity. So there is a basis in there for those assumptions. So if we, the scenario where we maybe egregiously go past the construction dates because of whatever happened, there could be additional discussion. But as an example, the East Biosolids facility project, because of some of the delays with getting the electrical gear and some of the other things, we went well past the initial assumption, and we were able to keep that without amendments to that construction services.
So maybe I'll ask that question a different way.
Okay.
The 2,196,000, will that get us completely to the end of where this thing is operational and ready to go?
It is expected to, yes. I don't
Okay,
expect
you
to
used
be
the word
back.
Expected,
So,
yeah.
Is there a chance that 2,196,000 can change, and what would change that 2,196,000 based on the contract?
Based on
that you submitted?
it will not change without me being back in front of you for another amendment.
Okay, so
I'm not sure if you're asking about the contracts, the actual contract language, or the amounts.
well, the amendment we're talking about approving, if I'm correct, Adam, is 2,196,000. That's one
Correct,
portion.
spelled out in the amendment to the contract.
Correct. So I'm just wondering if that has any potential to change, or are we locked in and that will get us from point A today to point B where it's up and going and you guys are no longer doing it for this plant?
Yeah, based on all the information we have right now, that gets us to the end, yes.
Okay.
And if that were to change, Scott is saying that he would be back here to ask for a subsequent amendment where you can ask him additional questions as to why.
And I know it's kind of a rudimentary, but obviously you're familiar that the Bonestro had done work in the past. And we got contracted with them, and there were many issues
Change
that they
orders.
left the city with.
Okay.
And then they went under, and to redress those issues, we had no one to go to. Is there any sort of like warranty or insurance we have when we're going to be spending 33 million as to making sure that we get the finished product?
In, is just to clarify, are we talking about the construction amendment or the construction contract or the professional services agreements?
Both.
Both. Within,
Because I see in that, in this, I mean, it says very clearly that this notice is not a guarantee or warranty of contractor's performance, and that's the services of the engineer. I mean, I just want clarity that we're not going to end up in the same position that we ended up with Bone Stroke. And so I just want to make sure that doesn't happen, because you guys are going to be essentially overseeing.
correct. Yes.
So we're going to be relying on you to oversee a project that's going to be north of $30 million.
Correct.
So if something were to happen with the contractor or subcontractors, we're going to you, you're going to them.
Correct. That's part of the construction administration process. Yes.
Yeah.
So for the contractors portion of it, that's where we would be able to rely on the performance bonds and the payment bonds that are in the contractors portion of the project. Now, there's also a 1-year general warranty post substantial completion that's part of that contract. Now that, in the specific example with the roof where it was happening several years later, that's timing wise, that's after the 1-year warranty. So then you're going to a different mechanism, as Ron was mentioning. I'm having trouble answering it in hypotheticals, but we have no intent of selling to another larger engineering firm. As far as I know, you will always be dealing with AE2S, and on the scale of, eventually I will probably retire, but if I have anything to do with it, I will be here with you for the duration of this project and the next projects that the city may need. That is my intent. So as long as you'll have me. So I'm struggling to answer it.
You are, I mean, by sitting there explaining that, the performance bonds, those bonds, and the 1-year warranty that's going to be there. That's what, when we're out talking to the citizenship out there,
Sure.
and saying you're spending $30 million, if there is an issue that happens, is the city on the hook, or do we have some sort of recourse to redress the situation? So we have performance bonds. So I know we have withholding, money during
Yep.
the contract, but then what happens once it is completed? We sign off, and then, 6 months later, we find out that there's an issue that we didn't know upon completion.
Yeah, and honestly, those are some of the hardest ones to handle that are right after the warranty period in those next couple of years. Because if it's 20 years down the road, I think there's general understanding that things just age, right? But it is the ones that are shortly after the warranty period that are the most difficult.
Great. Any other questions or comments?
Madam Mayor, I did just have a comment. It does feel a little bit like we're being backed against a wall with the $68,000 or $68,200. It seems, I know we talked about writing a letter, but is there anything else that you would suggest that we do? Is this the plate that is this the hand we've been given? And we just have to move forward?
I agree that it does feel like the MPCA has put us under duress. That there really isn't if they're dictating that this is a requirement of the project, and like state statute states that like we cannot legally move forward with the project in the absence of doing this activity. I have tried to find a way to do, and I've looked at this a lot of different ways. I don't usually read all the state statutes. So like this one, I've dug into this one, and they've got us a couple different ways on this. The only thing I had come up with that I don't think is a good option is that I don't even know if I haven't actually talked with Dave, so I don't know if he would even agree with this, but like at some point I don't know if the city can declare emergency. I don't know that we justify an emergency even to do that. But like at some point there has to be some sort of safety valve, but I don't know that we're there for that kind of extraordinary measure.
And that's kind of how I understand it. When you're dealing with the MPCA, it's like dealing with the DNR or MnDOT. Some things, it's just, okay, then don't do the project.
Sure. When you said that you looked at state statute, when did it change? Was there a change 2 years ago that somebody stuck this in? Or I mean, when did it change?
So I should be a little more clear. Like the state statute that I'm referring to is what ties us to completing the EAW before we can move forward. That's the state statute. The MPCA guidance specific to air modeling is changed often from what I understand. I'm not actually an air modeler, so that portion, that's not work that I'm actually doing. I don't know exactly how often that is evolving, but my understanding is that it evolves fairly often. And so there's the written guidance part, which is evolving. There's also the informal part of what they're actually going to make you do. The EAW process at some point feels like guilty until proven innocent. And like that's like we're basically having to prove that we're not causing a significant environmental impact. And that the bar that MPCA has said that we have to get over is this refined air modeling to demonstrate that we're innocent of causing environmental impacts.
I would almost say in this project specifically with the neighbors would say we're definitely improving it. We're putting it all inside. Like,
yeah, and I mean that is the one silver lining that I can see here is that by doing this refined air modeling, we will have this thing that very clearly demonstrates what our hydrogen sulfide is going to look like.
Sure.
And I mean, this modeling, from what I understand, is it's like a desktop model, but at the fence line, they have a virtual receptor every 10 meters along that fence line and do the calculations of that radiating out for 50 kilometers. So that it's a robust modeling effort that incorporates all the existing air data that the MPCA has to put into the existing conditions of it. then you model the facility and the new parts of it, and then run that through the actual computer, the air computer model. And it's a pretty robust process.
So what if, and obviously I think none of us are air modelers, as you said. So we're assuming this is gonna be fine at our fence line. What if there is an issue? That obviously adds to then we're gonna have to do remediation to get that, correct?
Sure. So the potential recourse, and we had a little bit of preview of that with the one that we did, that was the very conservative. It's a much less refined model, which is why it's so conservative. And that one, the only thing that we actually had to do was to the existing generator, only because it's peak shaving, we might have to make that stack a little taller. Exactly. In that case, because it was the very conservative model, it was going to get a decent amount taller. With this refined modeling, we're anticipating it'll show that we don't need to do that at all, or maybe we need to make that a little taller. So that's what we're spending this amount of effort for.
Or a
Not
longer
sure
chimney,
what.
potentially.
Yeah,
68,000
essentially, yes.
Right.
And
No,
this
the
is,
MPCA needs to justify that they other people, so.
All right. Well, as you can tell, we're not happy.
I'm right there with you.
You knew about it before us. All right, so going back to item 5.2, these are broken up into two different things.
Correct.
Keep the thing moving. Let's look at item 5.2, or yeah, 5.2. Is there any more questions on this?
Do, when you're mentioning the 4 million and the 14, you're mentioning 4 million on the short-term contracts and the 14.4 million for materials and labor. As far as if we were to approve the 33,889,000 to Rice Lake construction, trying to understand what our risk is with that. I'm guessing 4 million of that 33,889,000.
Yeah, about 4 million is on 15-day or less quotes. So based on the schedule that we're anticipating doing, assuming that this is approved tonight and that we'll get the contract actually signed by the end of the week, then it's in Rice Lake's court to start making those agreements with their material suppliers. So of that 4 million, about 1.6 should be on that more like that 15-day schedule. So I anticipate that they should be able to lock in most of those. 2.4 million of that 4 million was the terms were the at shipping. So those are the ones that are more at risk of because that on the at shipping basis, it means we got to get through shop drawing review, actually get through fabrication, and when they put it on the truck is when they do their spot price, which is very different from what traditional construction pricing is. Like whenever you
Find anything.
and that the contractors are frustrated with it because they don't know what the price is, and so and frankly I've heard from them, not just Rice Lake, other contractors as well, that they've gotten burned on it, particularly on pipe, because of that part where they don't know the price until it actually gets on a truck. So that is the spot where it would be at risk. That the mechanism for any changes would be via change order that we would intend to have fully documented, where we've already got all the documentation of what their bid day quotes were. So, I mean, at that point, it is simple math.
So we will be getting those change orders along the way because of this.
Correct. If there are,
order and the shipping.
yeah, if there are change orders.
If there are.
Yes.
Okay, Any other questions?
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Tom.
Dave, have you had a chance to review? I know we're dealing with 5.2 right now, but if you had a chance to review the contract amendments,
Yes, I have.
and what was you good? The wording?
I was good with the wording.
Okay.
Any
Because
other?
we can't do one without the other, essentially.
I know.
Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-46, accepting bids and awarding the contract for the West Wastewater Treatment Facility Improvements Phase 1 project to Rice Lake Construction Group of Deerwood, Minnesota. The base bid amount of $33,889,800 with no alternates being awarded.
Is there a second?
My second.
Motion by Tom, seconded by Jeff. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Now moving on to item 5.3. Tom says they're married to each other, basically.
Mayor,
Yes, Jeff?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
Motion to approve Exhibit K, Amendment 2 in the amount of $2,518,000. Exhibit K, Amendment 3 in the amount of $68,200 to the professional services agreement with AE2S.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Jeff, seconded by Brittany. Is there any discussion?
Dave, is there any way we can word that to stick the MPCA with that 68,200?
Mayor, council members, I am not aware of any way to change the wording on that.
Stick that, yeah, intentional.
At least I asked.
You did.
It's on the record.
Send them an invoice when it's all done.
Yeah.
There
we go.
I like it.
But with that under discussion, I do think there's value to be sending a letter.
To our
Yeah.
representatives
To our
to
representatives
see if
about
they
this.
can
So,
put some pressure on them, because
Alan,
it sounds
Sabrina?
like you're talking to just technical staff. It's like
yes,
technical staff should not be saying that. They can say it, but
if
there's
you can
people
all,
above them.
you can all work together to get that language, but it should be sent, should be noted so they're aware of it. Yes. Agreed. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Scott.
All right, we're moving on to item 6, which is city council reports and updates. Does anyone have anything? I have a few. So as we brought up before under Prairie View Estates, I wanted just added that we talk about MacGyver and 80th Street with that turn lane. And I know that we talked about adding it later to CIP, but it is important. It was brought up by many residents, and I think if anyone's driven over there, we would all agree it's kind of a huge issue. Next, this one was for Ron in regards to, we did all of our trail projects last year, and we had the contractor go out and do the seeding, and some of it is maybe, I mean, it's a very different spring, I get that, but some of it is either springing grass or it maybe got washed out. Is that going to be the city coming back out and assessing all that? I know that we kind of left it that we were done with the contract. The contractor, yes. Okay. Yes. So I just want that noted because there are major areas along there that just, it hasn't come in. And so, I mean, we don't want to get to a spot where we just have weeds growing in, then we're in violation of our own court enforcements that we've got weeds versus grass. So, well, Dan's shaking his head, but we need to set the example, Dan, and not be
Yes.
like,
You're not gonna tell on yourself?
Mayor, the city properties are exempt from the weed
Well,
ordinance.
I'm just letting you know that there was a project done, and I'm not asking you to know, I agree with the no mow May, obviously we support it. I'm just referring to there's areas that just were done and they were done very late, or there was rainfall, and so we're gonna need staff to drive through, look at the areas that were done with, in conjunction with those trail projects, and fix anything that needs to be fixed.
Doesn't look very good if the city's not keeping up their, you know.
Well,
areas.
and those are also, you know, and those are next to people's homes too, so. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Jack.
Can I bring something up in our radio report, but I know we did the speed limit signs, but I've been noticing now driving and our census is supposedly up to date from 2020. I've been seeing our city of Otsego signs still say our population at 13,000. Would that be updated? Have we discussed that? How does that change? Those are county signs.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, any other council reports and updates? Moving on to staff reports and updates. Sabrina.
Thank you, Mayor. We opened the street maintenance position recruitment last week, so that will be going on for the rest of this week and will close next Friday. So that will be a street maintenance one position. And so if you know anyone that's interested in it, let them know it's on the website. As noted on the consent agenda, we have our intern starting at the end of this month. So his name is Joey Hinsman. He is a recent graduate, or this coming weekend will be a graduate of UW La Crosse, and should be starting either the week before Memorial Day or that week afterwards, depending on his schedule. So
What was his name again?
Joey Hinsman.
Joey?
Yep. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Adam.
No updates tonight, Mayor.
It just doesn't seem like you.
Yes.
All right, that's fine. Audra.
Thank you, Mayor. I will not be at the next meeting, so Bethany will be here filling in for me.
I have nothing more, Mayor, but I did speak twice during this meeting.
Well,
Three times.
it's noted.
That's enough.
That's enough. All right, Dan.
No update.
Oh, that's good.
Ron? Yes. Mhm. Right.
Stretches.
It'll be interesting.
Hey, Mayor.
Yeah.
Have we done the no parking signs? Yeah. I think I drove by this.
Off clean. One other comment, just, you know, we obviously have all of the road construction happening to the north of us. And there's, I just think we need residents to even be aware of that too. Just going even north on Parish Avenue, everyone's trying to jump off right now. They jump off on 38, they're going down Quad A. So I mean, if Jason was here tonight, I was just gonna make sure that we're kind of watching those side streets, because Thursday night, people are flying down Quad A Avenue and trying to get out on 42. You have people getting out on 42, 39, and it's just bottlenecking at Parish going north. So the roundabout, you know, when we talk about the positives of the roundabout, this is one of the negatives. You can't go anywhere if everybody's trying. It's stopped in Elk River all the way down Parish. There's nowhere to go in that roundabout. So, And again, we know everybody's gonna find their alternate spot because of road construction, but just to be aware of that for maybe avoid that area on those heavy going up north days, but the last 2 weeks on Thursday and Fridays, it's been a parking lot. So
They think they're getting the.
They think they're-
Federal River-
they think they're going
or
faster.
River crossing. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
it's actually worse.
yeah, so, and I know there's something that we can do, but just, watching those speeds, because people are, at that point, they're just, flying off on all the exits, so.
Sure frustrated because.
Yeah,
Going in everywhere.
so maybe if someone has a food stand, they could just open one up.
I don't know. Otherwise, you're gonna have to, the only other thing that you do is get somebody out there to sit there and stop it. So to make sure that local traffic can somehow get through.
Because I was just trying to get to the gas station. Like, I wasn't trying to go to Elk River, I just wanted. And I couldn't turn around then, I was just stuck. I was like, well, I guess I'll ride my bike. Get there fast. I could have, yeah. Anyone else have anything?
Sergeant announcements you're missed.
Yeah, there you go. All right, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Second.
Motion by Tom, seconded by Tina. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The meeting is ended. Thank you all for attending.